have some thoughts about college football, particularly the Lane Kiffin situation that's playing out, at Ole Miss, and really, which is playing out all over the country. Okay, and when you start to think about college football, right? There was a point, and maybe it was 10 years ago, and I don't know if sports and I'm not even saying the NCAA is that smart to have this thought out of a process, but like the Lane Kiffin stuff, like people talk about it, right? And it takes up, Kiffin content, right? That's what I heard Dan Wetzel reported or referred to it as. ESPN's Dan Wetzel. He's like, there is so much Kiffin content now that like every day you wake up, there's a new story, and it generates, interest, and there's numbers behind all of that. And, is Lane Kiffin at fault? Is he not? I'll talk about that in a second. But I do think, and I wouldn't even use the term in danger, but the way that the college football calendar has set up, it is disappointing that we are talking about these types of situations as opposed to the actual games. And we're moving towards November or December, but we're talking about whether Lane Kiffin is going to come back. He has to make a decision right after the Egg Bowl on Saturday as to whether he's going to stay or not. And he holds a press conference yesterday, and every time somebody asks, he kind of poo-poos it. And, I'm not going to talk about anything else, which is I understand that just from a, hey, let's focus on football standpoint. But then it's also like, Lane, why don't you tell us what the hell you're going to do? There is one scenario where Lane Kiffin comes out of this smelling like a rose, in my opinion. And here it is. It is the scenario where his interest in these other jobs force Ole Miss to come to the table with a deal not only for him, right, but for his players and for the university to give that football program what they need to win a national championship. And so if this is all a little bit of smoke and mirrors and that becomes the end result, pretty awesome, right? Pretty awesome. Now, if we're sitting here next week, or if after, they win or lose, that game, by the way, it's like a 7.5 point line, I think. And that game can go crazy either way. It's not like a regular walk in the park for Ole Miss when you're playing Mississippi State, right? And so whatever the result of that game is, if he tells us on Saturday, the day before they announce the college football playoff, that he's leaving or to go, it won't be the day before, but it would be the week before, that he's leaving to go somewhere else. And that actually affects their, and we've talked about this as being a nightmare about a week ago, that affects their college football playoff appearance hopes. And obviously will put like quite a blemish on the football program, which, by the way, people from Ole Miss are like pounding their chests, like, we need a decision. It's like, hey guys, slow down. You haven't won anything in 60 years. Like Reese Davis said that, and that is true. I hate to be a dick, but let's have a little bit of, introspection here as to who we really have been up until this point. But I hope that he stays, and I hope that this is everything that I just mentioned, right? That it is almost like an arms race for his program that he is working on putting the finishing touches on. Because I've talked about it on this show. I do feel like we've seen, I don't feel like everybody feels like it. There's been a different version of Lane Kiffin we have seen recently. And I was really on board and all for the ride that took me to last Thursday, but we had Shahan Jayaraja on this show on Thursday morning last week, CBS Sports national college football writer. And he mentioned, like, look, man, I was like looking at Trinidad Chambliss to maybe be like a low-key Heisman contender. And, Shahan, by the way, announcing yesterday he is a Heisman voter now. Pretty awesome. Sick, dude. Sick. So, but he mentioned, I realized that, like, Chambliss doesn't have a shot at winning the Heisman, not because of how he's playing, but because Lane Kiffin takes all the air out of the room in Oxford. And that kind of bums me out because as we know, we've talked about, Lane is sober and he's got like a different take on things, and he's sort of slowed down, and, he hasn't been chasing jobs like he had been in the past. The Auburn job was there for him. He decided to stay at Ole Miss. But it's like, are we witnessing now? Look, again, I talked about it yesterday with Mac Rhodes. It's the human condition. It's a ton of money. You don't know what his ex-wife, who may be like his wife again now, I'm not sure, but they're very close still, raising their kids together in Oxford. The fact that, her dad played football at Florida certainly speaks to me as, okay, maybe now there really is another horse in this race, like family-wise, because a lot of times you hear these coaches, and especially someone who has mellowed like Lane Kiffin has, let me do this thing because my family wants me to do it, because my daughter goes to Ole Miss and my wife is here now and we're vibing here as a unit. Well, if there's other intriguing opportunities for the family to become whole somewhere else in the country, now it's like, man, maybe he is going to leave. At the end of the day, like, I'm sure a couple people know, but Lane Kiffin knows what he's going to do, or maybe he doesn't at this point. But I think the problem is, as much as it's exciting, and this is what I began this whole little segment with, as much as it is exciting to follow what's going on, I mean, if he announced, look, I want you to think about this, okay? I was watching the A-Rod documentary last night, which is actually really good, Scotty's guy. And, he is very open and transparent about the point that when he was with the Yankees, and it was during the final game of the 2008 World Series, or 2007 World Series, and A-Rod and Scott Boras came up with this idea that they were going to announce or leak the information that he was going to leave the Yankees in Game 4 of the World Series when the Red Sox were about to sweep. So Ken Rosenthal, the Fox reporter in the dugout, says, in the middle of this World Series game that's going to be a clincher for the Red Sox, we have breaking news. Alex Rodriguez is going to leave the New York Yankees to pursue another deal. I've just learned through Scott Boras, his agent. And A-Rod is on the documentary now, present day, being like, yeah, that was a mistake. People are messaging me like, why the hell are you announcing that you're opting out during the World Series? Like, it's just not a good look. Okay, now that's like a 20-something-year-old Alex Rodriguez. Maybe at that time he was 30. Now you got Lane Kiffin, a grown man who we know has like really matured and changed some of his immature ways and whatever. Part of that is what makes him great, I'm sure. But like, dude, what are you going to – you're trying to like – there's a college football weekend that's huge. Like, he's going to announce in the middle of Ohio State, Michigan, whether he's staying or not at Ole Miss. Like, that to me just – I'm not like an all-time purist. I love like some of the gossip and some of this news stuff, but like that just seems so weird and awkward and stupid and selfish and dumb that it's a bummer that this last weekend, and it's a bummer for the folks at Ole Miss, and even I'm sure, I wonder, our boy Chris Northington may be watching, and Madeline may be watching, our Mississippi State faithful, but like, it's like, and of course, Taina with that stupid chain she gave me. They're all Mississippi State people, and they could be watching right now, and they might be so excited because they may feel like they have a wounded animal coming into that Egg Bowl, right? The Mississippi State folks might be pumped, but it still casts a shadow over what should be a celebrated weekend in college football. And I hate that I quite possibly was wrong about the whole Lane Kiffin thing, because I felt like the changes in his life that he had made, becoming sober, he mentioned in that documentary that was so good on ESPN that, his daughter really kind of convinced him to stay when Auburn was knocking at the door because she's a student at Ole Miss. This is not that, right? I mean, of course it's not. Like, storybook endings are storybook because they're not real a lot of times. So, Scotty, anything on Lane Kiffin? Like, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Really?
I don't have a lot of thoughts, man. I agree with you. The timing of it feels uncomfortable.
And the NCAA has to fix the timing thing. That is on them.
Correct.
They need to fix this.
1000%. In fact, I saw maybe Pollock. I saw one of those big-time college football analysts we like say something like, of course, the NCAA needs to fix their calendar, but instead they're worried about the playoff format for next year because they extended the deadline to change the playoff format, which I think everybody likes the playoff format at the moment. So, yeah, it's an odd situation. I feel bad for fans of Ole Miss. I thought when they put out that statement last week, it was like, we will have an announcement after the Egg Bowl. I was immediately like, he's gone. He's gone. Like you don't say that if he's staying. You say, we're so excited we've extended Lane Kiffin, if he's staying.
Yeah.
I think the writing's on the wall, Pete. I think he's going to be at LSU. And by the way, that could either be the best decision of his career because, as we've talked about, it's a program where this century, 25 years, 3 different head football coaches have won a national title there. So it's a great school if you want to go for the top.
Yeah.
It could also be the worst decision of his career, Pete, because I think a lot of people thought Brian Kelly was perfectly capable of winning a national championship there when he got hired, and he flamed out in just a couple years. If you don't win in Baton Rouge a lot and quickly, you're done.
Yeah.
And Lane could be at Ole Miss for the next 20 years, win 9 to 10 games a year, and they're probably pretty happy with him.
Can he win two like things? One, I do think he's a better fit in Baton Rouge than Brian Kelly. That was super weird.
I would agree with that.
Brian Kelly,
I would agree with that.
I feel like Brian Kelly's a grifter. I do feel like Lane Kiffin is who he is.
1,000% fair. Yeah.
So, do you think he can win a national championship at Ole Miss?
I don't know.
Do you think that's why he would leave? Because he thinks he can?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's driven by different things, Pete. If you wanted stability in a place you could stay at a long time, he'd stay at Ole Miss. If you're trying to win championships, be a Hall of Famer, it makes sense to go to LSU. If you're trying to make money, it probably makes sense to LSU. LSU's probably offered him a few million more dollars a year to go to LSU than Ole Miss can offer him. Like, those two things are true. But I do wonder, man. I don't know if he can win a national. Like, he's a good head coach. He's a good head coach. He's had too many winning seasons to say he's anything less than really, really good. But is he, does he just need the right place? Or is he like Lincoln Riley? Is he like James Franklin? Is he someone who can get a team to a really high floor, but struggle to win the big one? I don't know. And what's unfortunate for that is he might have an opportunity at Ole Miss if he stayed 2 more months to prove it this year. It's a top 6 football team. Yeah. They could win the SEC or win a couple playoff games this year. And they may not have the chance to do it. He may not have the chance to prove it because he's got to jump. And that's crazy to me. He hasn't yet proven he can get the big one, right? And so I don't know. It's kind of and this doesn't surprise you if you know Lane Kiffin. It's a huge gamble on yourself if you take that job. It's saying, I know I can do it. And so I'm going to go to the place with the most resources, the most money, top 3 recruiting kind of school in America, and get it done. And if he does, he'll be an all-timer, top 5 coach of the century so far, legend. And if he doesn't, his legacy will be, man, that was a guy who had a really good thing, at Ole Miss, and his ambition outgained his ability.
And then he'll be the coach, Scotty, that we look back on, or the people after us, right? Because we'll probably be gone. But they look back on him in 30 years and they say, he couldn't get out of his own way wherever he went. He was a guy
correct,
who sort of just
kept.
Because he's got a great thing going right now.
He does. He does. And by the way, I know this can be triggering for our Waco audience, but we talked a few weeks ago about how they asked Art Briles at this Hall of Fame thing a few weeks ago about the rumors that he was going to go to UT. And he basically confirmed that Texas had, I don't know if they officially offered him the job, but we're interested in him to take that job after the 2013 season, the first Big 12 championship he won at Baylor. And he was interested and likely to take it. And then Baylor got blown out in a Fiesta Bowl. And he was like, okay, I'm not done. Like, I've got more to prove at Baylor. And maybe that's a different mindset than Lane Kiffin. Like, Lane Kiffin could say, man, I'm not done. I can win the SEC. I can win playoff games at Ole Miss. But it seems as though he's leaning towards saying, man, this LSU job may never come open for me again. And I'm a fool if I don't take it. And I think we can all understand that mentality as well.
Scotty, I understand that you're great at this. Thank you so much.
Hey, I understand that you're the great Pete Souza, the GOAT.
Scotty Swingler. And